Hey folks, this is Ben Gassel. How's it going? Just have a few things in my mind that would be great to talk about. Um, it's been a pretty relaxing day today. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit busier. Then I'm actually heading home to see my parents, on Thursday, and be back Friday. So, yeah. On this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about um, some of my social experiences in life, and you know what I've learned about different sorts of people, and maybe how it's going to influence the future. And I'm not entirely sure where this video will go at the moment, but I know what I'm trying to say, though, and I don't have to get into much of stuff really before my adult years, but I suppose some of it would probably be somewhat okay to talk about, or would make sense. So talk about. So when I was before turning 18, I definitely was someone who preferred only having a handful of friends or a few friends at a time, and I've always kind of been that way in general. And I mean, friends in real life, close friends, that sort of thing. And I really didn't like to make new friends. It was very awkward for me. It's always been awkward. And there's a lot of things that happened in college, and made a whole bunch of new friends, at least especially for the time being. Some I'm on Facebook still, or we're Facebook friends and stuff. And there was a huge boost in overall confidence at BYU, and to a certain extent other places. But I can tell you, by the time I was 30, or 35, I've known a fair number of rascals and rapscallions and scumbags. I've known some scumbags. I've known a lot of folks that were pretty easy to get along with, and some of those folks, I don't know. I'm just gonna put it this way: being a Mormon is very difficult in terms of um, the law of chastity, but we don't have to get into that. But that's law of chastity is hard for everyone, so it's often thought that by many folks that it's just unrealistic to be chaste. But again, I don't want to get into that very much. But this definitely does apply to the social arena. I was often very critical of people at BYU, but also very critical of people at Central Washington and everywhere. When I say critical, I mean I was I was very aware of the shortcomings of other people, and I really did not like to bring up those shortcomings, but I was very, very aware of them. And some people hid them, or some people thought so. Some people would say or think it's none of my business, or all this stuff, or it's very personal, whatever. Asking this stuff, and you get that attitude, that more way of thinking, from a lot of people. Increasingly in modern times. There's so many things that are social and so many attitudes. There's always some truth to what people are saying. There's always some validity, but there's always some things that are wrong with that way of thinking as well. And I was privately critical of so many people, and many members of my church are, because sorry folks, one second here. Sorry about that. Just getting a bit more comfortable. Okay, there we go. This is also one of the things I want to talk about, because on some level, I kind of grew up thinking along these lines, and there are reasons why. And I don't really want to know if I want to use the word critical, but let me just explain myself a bit more. I might not be making complete sense here, but when any person, doesn't matter if they're Mormon or not, when any person grows up in a household where you're taught to live the Ten Commandments, and if you break a commandment, you need to repent and all this stuff, and if you're not living the commandments, you're sinful and evil. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, and you look at people to make friends with, and you are curious about dating at a certain point and all that stuff, it becomes something that you're more. It depends on the person, but many people are always asking themselves. We all ask ourselves, what kind of people do we want to talk to and have relationships with? And many of us want closer, better relationships with people, that sort of thing. But it's often the question of, what is it that I'm looking for in someone I'm dating, or a spouse, husband or wife, or what kinds of things do I look for in another friend? We don't always, many of us don't always get to have the kinds of friends or spouses that we really like to have. I get that. This whole thing is a very emotional subject for all of us. And let me get back to these Ten Commandment things and morals for a sec. And anybody who grows up in a very strict household, and this also applies to other religions, of course, as well. It's hard to not be. It's hard to be completely oblivious to the folks that are more obviously, or they don't make it a secret. They're very obviously not living a principled life. It's hard not to be a little critical of that. And there's always the question of, how do you interact with people just on a day-to-day basis? If you're around less principled people, how do you not go crazy? Or if it's like, yeah. How do you get along well with people that don't have your same standards? Do you always need to surround yourself with people that have the same standards as you? These are all questions that everybody needs to answer for themselves. There's really no clear-cut answer. We know that Jesus spent time with quote-unquote sinners. Why did he spend time with them? Well, we have our ideas, but would Jesus only spend time with people that were especially righteous? And then there's also, many people ask the question, well, what is being righteous? And so people have different ideas about what that means. But one's upbringing is a big deal. Sometimes there are people that totally go against the grain. They just totally flip out, and they just, Yep, I understand that. Like I said, I've known a lot of different kinds of people in my life. And because of the way I am, I don't always know people or I don't always see people the way that other people see them. There are many things I probably I just didn't want to pay attention to. I didn't want to think about. Yeah. And then there are other things that I noticed about people that maybe they weren't aware that I was noticing them. Those things about them. And it was always easier to get along with people that were kinder to me. It's always been the case. That's the number one rule in my life, is when someone is especially kind and we have some things in common, we're friends. If they want to be friends, we're friends. That's always been the way it has been. Someone doesn't have to have the same standards as I do. They don't have to, it doesn't have to be exactly the same to be my friend. And there are a lot of Christians, there are a lot of LDS folks that are, I think, too wrapped up in that whole thing. I think we do want to have friends that are help us to live good lives, but I just think that well, I don't know. It's a complex subject. I think it's not good for someone to only spend time with people of their same faith. That's not, I think, the best situation, but there are people that do that. And people have some funny ideas about other people. So let's get to these funny ideas that people have had. At least some of them. I'll probably have to make more videos about the subject in the future. So one of the funny ideas that I come across, it has to do with how people see me. And I mentioned some of this before, but I truly do believe that many people don't have the foggiest idea what I'm like, and they misread me and all this stuff. And you guys that have been following me for a while probably understand why that is. And most people are not as intelligent as I am. That's true. In order to be a music major at a very high level and be a composer, and also be very okay, not it's the grade thing is different. That's more about some level it's intelligence, but most of the time, vast majority of time in college, it's all about how good of a student you are, how what's your work ethic like, and it's not. I would think that there might be some majors where IQ is, but what I'm trying to say is to be a successful musician, especially in competition and class, especially in classical music and all that stuff. It's one of those fields that does increasingly the farther you go, it does require a higher IQ. You can't be a professional composer or professional musician if you have mediocre or lower intelligence. It just doesn't work that way. And there's different kinds of things that people are really good at IQ wise, and I get that. So most of the time, you might be thinking about math and science and things and computer programming, and yeah. But to be very successful in music, it's especially one of those fields that does require a lot of IQ stuff going on, a lot of neurons firing. So because of that, I'm often prone to wanting to have friends that are more intelligent, but that isn't always the case. Some of my friends are, especially if they go to the same church I go to, and we just get along in some respects, and we have some things in common. I have friends that are, I've had friends that have mild Down syndrome. That's also very much the case. It's just a question of what it is we're doing, what it is, And so, okay, there's a lot of different sides to everybody too. And one of the things I've come across is a lot, so many things to talk about here. I have, you know, um, okay, so I'm very familiar with being misunderstood, and I continue to find that that's very much the case a lot of times. Um, and that's definitely in my church, within my church, with people in my church, and also outside of my church. I also continue to find that people just don't understand other people as well as they ought to. And I'm including myself in this regard, but there's a lot of things that escape the awareness of people about other people. And we live in a world where there's a lot of coldness, and there's a lot of we'll just say evil that permeates relationships, and it's very easy, I think, for people to feel isolated and to feel um, bummed out, even if they have lots of friends or some friends or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's the way the world is we're increasingly, I think people are increasingly depressed. Everybody's, or there's a lot of things that are very wrong and that have spiritual connections that we're talking about in this arena. But a lot of times, again, it's not just me that, certainly I'm not the only one that feels misunderstood. Everybody feels misunderstood. A lot of people do feel misunderstood. And a lot of people try to be upbeat on YouTube, but they're just it's very easy to say, oh, they're just hiding the things aren't so good in their lives, just like Facebook. Well, my hope on YouTube was that you would see more of what people really like, and that people would be able to have some kind of way of meeting other people on YouTube. And then maybe if it was romantic, or maybe some other way of having friends in real life, and you just never know where that can go. A lot of people are very doubtful about those things on YouTube. But I knew that Facebook was just a place where you basically try to make yourself look good. And I hated it. So I'm not really on it. And I just find that things like YouTube or other websites like that have video content in the future, um, it's there's more of a potential to understand people um, online, and then could lead to other things. But when you have videos where people are themselves and they're talking about heartfelt stuff, if there are people like that, the more that people do that on YouTube, I think that's a very healthy thing. And we often are afraid of showing our real selves, but what's there to be afraid of? What's It's not like you're giving away your social security number, your credit card information. That's not the same thing at all. You're just being yourself. So, but there's that whole train of thought. Let's get back to some other stuff here in my life that I've noticed about social things. Aside from, there's definitely a lot of bullying that went on when I was younger, and that was for a lot of people. And that's just a lot of whatever. It's just a very common thing in public schools for that to happen. So, but there's all the misunderstandings, or not being aware of, or different ideas people have about, and different things they have about what's attractive, what's not, physically or whatever, sexually or whatever it is. And then there's a lot of, again, the funny ideas people have about people, and there are a lot of people that make snap judgments about other people. There are a lot of people that have a lot of anxiety that they never want to never want to present to people. A lot of people don't want to look smaller than, or are not as just less well thought of. Nobody wants to be the less well thought of person. Everybody wants to be well thought of, included, warm inside their hearts, loved, secure, understood, in the right place. That's what we want. And we don't like it when someone threatens that in any way. Some people are very sensitive about this stuff. And I don't know, the older you get, the more the hope is that, at least for me, but I think the general idea is that you tend to sweat the small stuff less. I think that's the general trend in life, and you tend to have more understanding of these things in general. But it's so hard going through this stuff, you know. I've often found that the nicest, most genuine, most great people to spend time with, in general, across the board, are people that are kids all the way to old folks. It's folks that are themselves when you're talking to them, and you know that they're being themselves because of the way you feel. And on top of that, they're trying. See, the thing is, they're trying to be good. They're not. Nobody's perfect, and they also aren't especially critical of you, and so you're not especially critical of them. So you can forgive them of their faults, because you get the feeling that they forgive you for your faults, but you both are trying to work on your faults. You're both trying to be better people, and these are the kinds of people in general that I tend to get along with very well, and feel some kind of kinship with, or some kind of connection, some kind of deeper connection. And when that person's gone, or then whatever it is, the nature of a relationship, whatever it was, I feel sad because I miss that person. And I think it's very natural for people to feel that way. No, I understand that all you guys out there have these different ideas, all kinds of different things that they look for in other people, and any kind of relationship. And some people are I think, more. I'm aware of the kinds of folks that aren't as ethical, and there's many different kinds of characters, I guess you could say. And it's very common for people to be immoral. That's a very common thing. I'm very aware of that. Um, it's probably less common for someone to be unusually cruel or unusually difficult to get along with, but there certainly are those folks, and there are people that have emotional issues and um, yeah. So I think a lot of people have misunderstood me in general. A lot of folks, and I'm very well versed in. Believe me, folks, I know what I'm talking about here. And yeah, I mean, how can I put this? Well, maybe some of what I'm going to say I'll mention later at some point. I don't know. I haven't quite got the right words for some trains of thought, I suppose. But I know there's nothing more irksome than people that are very critical of you when you are trying to make new friends, and you are trying to build, make a life in some wherever you're at, whatever situation you're at. There's nothing more irksome for everybody you run into to be critical of you, regardless of whatever standards they're living, or judgmental of you regarding how attractive you are, or how your age, or your race, or your physical attributes, or how much money you have, job you have, education, all that stuff. And you're feeling judged, and people are unkind to you. Nobody wants to spend time with you. I'm aware that there are many people in that situation, or more or less in that situation. I mean, even if someone has a great situation in your life, um, there are still many things that vast majority of people just still need to keep understanding better about their fellow man. Um, if I, for instance, am chatting with somebody who I immediately sense that they're not that bright, but they don't have Down syndrome. Down syndrome folks can be very great to talk to you in a way. I mean, it's a very comforting feeling because, but if I'm talking to someone who's just kind of blue collar, a little bit of an idiot, most folks are not really that, uh, whatever. Anyway, so someone who's not very interesting to talk to, their interests are very mediocre level stuff, or less. Well, if somebody is not as intelligent, or someone's not as curious about things and that sort of thing, or they're not quite as whatever, then I try to shift the interest in that person, or just trying to help that person feel comfortable. I try to shift it to something more of a spiritual, emotional connection, if there is one, instead of an intellectual one, or something more like just at least being kind and friendly to that person, you know, being decent to that kind of person. And we all have our people that we want to spend time with. If I find myself in a situation where I'm around people that are very odd, and I feel kind of funny around them, like these people are weirdos or freaks, but these people are kind to me, and they're decent to me, and they like how I'm artsy and eccentric in my own way. And okay, that's not a bad situation to be in. But to be honest, to be frank, it isn't always folks that are homosexual that that's not really so much the case. It's often people that are emotionally very moody, and that can be attractive, but it's often not, or it can be fun, but it's often not. You know, and just I'm intrigued by people who have active imaginations, always, but I'm often put off by people that have um, some serious issues that never or it's different. I don't know. A lot of people have psychological conditions. It's true, or a lot of people that have used drugs have other issues that are more or less tougher to deal with, or more or less appealing, or not so much appealing. But when people have some more greater, I guess you say, emotional issues, I find that whatever, if you use the word issue, if a person's issue is or issues are more like whatever issues I have had in the past, or whatever issues I have, if the issues match more, and it can be romantic if it's a guy girl thing. Yeah, I mean, because we have more in common, I'm more where that person is. But if our issues are different, that can be a very frustrating thing, at least dating wise. But if the issues are similar, yeah, I think it would be more of a match. Because I'm not a person that's free from issues, so to speak. It depends on what you think is, depends on what you consider to be an issue anyway. Some people would have an issue with me not making less than 100,000 a year. That there's those kinds of people, right? That's an issue. Oh god. What? Yeah, well, that's snobbery, basically, or it's, gosh, people want to. I don't know. I don't know. There are people out there that have some very messed up ways of thinking, and just, hey, if everybody had a life of luxury, then it would be reasonable to assume that the one person who didn't, and he chose to not be, I don't know. But even then, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just that there are materialistic people out there, and they never cease to amaze me how idiotic some of these folks can be, in a way. So, so um, let's get back to my church here for a second, or maybe just Christians, just Christians, more Protestant Christians, or it doesn't really matter. But I'm referring more to white American Christians as well as people by church, because just it's more demographic where I live. I just happen to know more white folks and other folks as well, but it's just the way it is. So there's a lot of people, whether they're Christian or LDS, that like to talk on and on about, oh, how is your mom and dad doing? Oh, this and that. Oh, that's great. Like like they put on a face. They're trying to be cheerful, I guess, or some talking to some people is a bit more of a chore, because it's it, it's kind of like the idea of where there are people out there that want to fit people in boxes, and they want to kind of micromanage everyone, and they want to just kind of, I don't know, whatever they want to do. It's like they kind of want to put people down in some way, or they want to, I don't know. Uh, and other people, just many people don't really have the interest in making friends with anybody who has more than one or two issues that are minor. A lot of people can be very severely critical of others, not just in a moral sense, but in a, um, I just don't want to deal with the nuttiness that's you've had from birth or whatever. There are people that have no patience, for other people's psychological issues or other kinds of issues that are more their fault. Some issues are not the fault of it, of someone. Other issues, well, in my opinion, are. But even if they are the fault of somebody, it's not like something is unforgivable. So there's all this evil going on. There's all this messed up stuff that I am somewhat aware of. Other people probably are even more aware of the stuff than me. I'm not denying that this stuff. I'm not saying that this stuff doesn't exist. It very much does exist. Um, if you know anybody, what work-wise, associates, let's say somebody doesn't have a single friend to their name, they're single, they're not dating, just very few people that are knowing. But if you know one person, just knowing one person and talking to them more at work or whatever, and it's like, or one or two people, and they're kind of your social life in a way right now, and you never can. Sometimes you can't really help that, or you try to make new friends, whatever, but it's often hard. What I'm trying to say is that um, there are people that, I mean, I don't know. This is there are some very deep reasons why I am the way I am. There are some very, very deep reasons why I treat people the way I do. I can't always explain why it is, but I really am. I make it a point to always try to have other people comfortable in my presence. Comfortable. And that's a huge deal. Huge deal. But it boggles my mind why someone would be uncomfortable around me unless they wanted to be a very evil person, especially a very cruel person. Because again, I don't know, the appetites of the flesh, of the sex, that sort of thing, that's a very common thing. And so it's a very tough thing to be chased. But it's like, aside from that, maybe that thing, and maybe some other related stuff, you can get into alcohol and drugs and stuff. It's very unusual for someone to prefer the company of cruel people. That's a very unusual thing to me. And that's a really, really messed up kind of thing. Oh, is that messed up indeed? I just cannot understand that psychology, but it's not completely 100% out of my awareness of things. But, this is where you get into, like, if someone likes being around people that are cruel to them, it's like, I understand that there's a connection with abuse, and I don't want to get into that right now. But so I gotta wrap up this video. I might make a part 2 in the future. Um, yep, I'll leave it in the comments below. Catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.